my channel. Today we're going to be having a look at ecosystems and some of the topic around about ecosystems. So the first things that we'll look at are what makes up an ecosystem and how is everything in an ecosystem connected. So first of all, what is an ecosystem? So here we have a picture of an ecosystem. There are different parts of this that you need to know. So the first thing that you need to know is an individual. So this is one particular living thing within the ecosystem. So here we have different individuals. We've got a plant here. We've got a herring here, a bird. And then we've got individual fish. So each one of these fish is an individual. If we have multiple of the same individual, same species, then we have a population. And if we put the population together with the other populations, then we have a community. So a community is all the different individuals that live in the same place. Habitat is the different places where the individuals live. And then overall, taking the community and the habitat, we have an ecosystem. Okay, I want you to pause the video, and if you're using the Google Classroom resources, there is a sheet to help you. I want you to match the word to the definition. So they've been muddled up here, and I want you to match up the words on the left to the definitions on the right. Okay, so let's match up these words and definitions. So first of all, we have an individual. So an individual is a single living thing or organism that you can find within the ecosystem. We've then got a population. So a population is a group of living things of the same type. Okay, so it's a group of individuals. So we might have an individual deer, but we'd have a population would be the whole herd of deer. We've then got the community. So a community is made up of all the different living things within a habitat. So within one place, all the different populations and individuals that are there. The habitat is the place where an organism lives. And if we bring all of this together, so all of the living creatures and their surroundings, that is an ecosystem. Okay, so another little task for you to have a look at. So in your jotter, I want you to draw a table with two columns, living things and non-living things, and decide which of these things belong in the column living and which things would belong in the column non-living. Pause the video now. So let's check your answers. So the living things are predators. So predators are things which would look for other living things to eat. Disease, so things like viruses, bacteria, fungi, things that could cause disease. Food, so that's either plants or other animals. And then competition, so this is other living things that are competing for the same resources. And then non-living things, we have pH, so this is how acidic or alkaline something is, so either water or the soil. Light, so just how light or dark the habitat is. Moisture, so how much water is within, say, soil. And then temperature, so how hot or cold the habitat is. So we have different factors which affect organisms and how they survive in an ecosystem. So the ones that are non-living are called abiotic factors, and we have different abiotic factors. So we've got light, temperature, pH, and moisture. Those are all our non-living factors, which we call abiotic factors. We've then got biotic factors, so these are things which are living. So this is our predators, competition, food, and disease. So having a look at all of this together brings us on to biodiversity. So this is a really important definition for you to learn. So biodiversity is the variety of all of the living things in our environment, And having a wide range of biodiversity is really important. So if we maintain biodiversity, then this means that we keep as wide a range as possible and big variety of all of the living things. And maintaining this is everyone's responsibility. So here are some of the things which make having a wide range of biodiversity important. So food. If we didn't have a very wide range of different plants and different animals that we could have as food, then our diet wouldn't be very good. You wouldn't be able to get all the nutrients that you need. A lot of our medicines come from plants or originally came from plants. So by having a large variety of plants, then we've got lots of different medicines that can treat us for different diseases. Industry uses lots of different plant materials for building, and if we didn't have lots of different types of plants, then we wouldn't be able to build different materials. So some woods are better for decorative objects, other wood might be better for structural objects. And then finally, recreation. So being able to go outside into nature and be able to go for a walk in the woods, or maybe being able to go for a kayak down a river. By maintaining biodiversity, then we maintain a recreational aspect of our lives. So what kind of activities at the moment are happening in the world which are threatening biodiversity? Have a look at this slide and see if you can come up with some different activities. Here are some of the different activities. So first of all, we have deforestation. So this can happen in either tropical rainforests or in other forests, and it destroys habitats, which reduces the food available and potential new medicines which might be not discovered yet. We have destruction of the coral reefs. So acidification of the sea has caused carbon dioxide levels to rise, which has caused bleaching of the coral reefs. And within coral reefs, that's a massive habitat for lots of different sea creatures. So if we destroy the coral reefs, then we lose the habitat for a lot of other life. Industry, production of pollutants affecting the sea, the air, the land. So if we're doing using a lot of fossil fuels, we're producing a lot of carbon dioxide, which is going up into the atmosphere, causing global warming, which causes problems, but also causing pollution. And overfishing. So if we remove fish from the sea too quickly, then they can't naturally replace themselves, which means that some species might become extinct. Have a go at copying this summary, and we'll have a look at what things we could add into it in a moment. In the middle of our summary, we have biodiversity definition. So the definition for biodiversity is the variety of all living things. Why is biodiversity important? Biodiversity is important for food, so that we have a variety of food. It's important for medicine, either current medicines or discoveries. It's important for industry, so for buildings, but also for making decorative objects. And it's important for recreation, going outside for walks, cycles, being able to go fishing, being able to go sailing. What threats are there to biodiversity? So we have the threat of overfishing, we have the threat of pollution from industry, coral reef bleaching, and deforestation. And how can we maintain biodiversity? So we can reduce the use of fossil fuels to prevent pollution. We can have quotas for fish, and we can stop cutting down trees. These are just some of the things we can do to maintain biodiversity. So I want you to think about an ecosystem. So you could choose any ecosystem or make one up for yourself. I want you to think about how you can use the words that we've learned. So individual, population, community, and habitat to describe your ecosystem and how does it all connect. So one of the tasks that you need to submit on Google Classroom is to draw and label your habitat. So put in your trees, your rocks, your water, all the different places where some of your living things might live. You then need to put in your plants and your animals and try and see where they are and what they are. And then say what non-living factors, what abiotic factors affect your ecosystem. So we're thinking about things like temperature, moisture, light, pH. So how is your ecosystem designed and how does that affect your ecosystem? So that's going to be your first task to do to submit on Google Classroom. So now that we've thought about ecosystems, we're now going to look at how we can investigate an ecosystem. So we're looking now at sampling. What influences where organisms live? And how could you sample or find out what organisms are living there and how many of them are there? So here we have a meadow. So what could we find out about a meadow? Based on this picture, we can see that in this part here, we've got lots of different flowers. So we could find out what flowers there are. We could find out how many there are. We could find out how many there are in different areas. We've also got lots of different trees. We could perhaps look at different insects that would also be within the meadow living there amongst the flowers. How would we actually go about this? So we could have a look at some abiotic factors. So we could look at light and temperature to see how light and dark areas are, how hot and cold they are. Abiotic factors can be measured and then we can use them to show their influence on organisms, where organisms choose to live. So have a think about what equipment we could use to measure different abiotic factors. So we've got factors like temperature, light, moisture and pH. To measure temperature, we would use a thermometer. To measure light, we can use a light meter. To measure moisture, we can use a moisture meter. And to measure pH, we can use a pH meter. So once we've had a look at the different abiotic factors, we want to sample the living things themselves. And there's a couple of things we can do to look at that. So for things like plants that are growing on the ground or slow moving animals, we can use a quadrat. So a quadrat is a square which is split up into smaller squares which you lay down. You then count how many squares have the plant that you're looking for. You don't count the number of plants themselves. So if we look at this quadrat here, we can see that in this square we have 2 daisies and in this square we have 2 daisies. However, we wouldn't count that there are 4 daisies. We would just count the squares which have the daisies in. So we'd say this is 1, 2, and then down here 3 and 4. And you would do this for the different plants that you have available. If you're wanting to look at small insects, then you can set a pitfall trap. So a pitfall trap is where you dig a small hole, you put some sort of cup into the hole, and then you have something over the top to cover it. The insects can then crawl along the ground and then fall into the trap, and then you can then go along and count them. So this is something that you actually could go out and do in your garden. Here we have our sampling of organisms. Use the word bank to try and fill in the notes. The first word here we have is quadrats. So quadrats are used for sampling the abundance, so how many, of different plants by counting the number of squares that they are found in. And then pitfall traps sample insects on the forest floor. So now we can see how we would sample different abiotic factors and what piece of equipment we would use to sample plants or insects. Have a look at this example of sampling. What is the piece of equipment called that is being used? What is the abundance of the bulrushes, which are these ones here, and what is the abundance of the grass plants? So this piece of equipment is called a quadrat. And for the bulrushes, we're counting the squares that we find them in. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So just the number of squares. And then for the grass plants, we have 1, 2, 3. So we're just counting the number of squares that we find the grass plants in. Once you have your ecosystem and you've decided to sample some of the things within it, we use keys to work out what those things are. So there are 2 different types of keys, branching and paired statement. So here we have a branching key. So you start off with one question and you branch each time. So here we have our first example. So it's in the vertebrate family and we have to decide, does it have fur or no fur? So it doesn't have any fur. Does it have feathers or no feathers? It has no feathers. Does it have dry skin or moist skin? It has moist skin. And does it have scales or no scales? So it has scales, which means that it's a fish. Try this example yourself. So the first decision is, does it have fur or no fur? So this has no fur. Does it have feathers or no feathers? It has feathers, which means it's in the bird category. A second type of key is the paired statement key. For this, you look at the picture and then you have to decide if the statement applies or not and then follow the instruction. So if we start off, we're going to try and name this green alien and then you can try and name the rest. So the first statement is mouth open or mouth not open. So as we can see, his mouth is open, so we need to go to statement number 2. Does it have arms or no arms? So we don't have any arms, which means that this alien's name is the Alienus quadligeus. Try and see if you can name the other aliens. So for this alien here, we have to decide, is the mouth open or not? So mouth is not open, which means we go directly to number 4. Horns or no horns? So he doesn't have any horns, so we will go to number 5. And legs or no legs? And he has no legs. So this means that he is Alienus blobicus. Looking now at this little alien here, is it mouth open or not? So mouth's not open, so we go to number 4. He has no horns, so we go to number 5. And he has legs, so he is Alienus physicus. Looking at the little blue alien, so his mouth is not open, we go to number 4. He has horns, which gives you his name, so he's Alienus stripicus. Okay, so we've got this little pink alien here. So his mouth is open, so we go to number 2. Does have arms, so we go to number 3. Not hairy, so this one is Alienus tritoothicus. And then our final alien, mouth is open, so we go to number 2. Does have arms, so we go to number 3. And is hairy. So this is Alienus haericus. So your final task on Google Classroom is to try the quiz, which will test you on all of the things that we've went over today. Well done.